Julia, what do we know or what don't we know about the timing of these deportation flights to El Salvador?
Well, yesterday, and what the government did provide, although, of course, as Kelly points out, Judge Boasberg wants more, they said that the third flight, the one that left after his order, putting a temporary restraining order on the Alien Enemies Act use, was full of people who weren't actually being deported under the Alien Enemies Act. In other words, they would have been deported anyway because they had final orders of deportation. So they are arguing that the rest of the flights are still in compliance with the order. But we do know that there were 2 flights in the air at the time of the order, although they're arguing that because Judge Boasberg told them to turn around those flights when they were in the air and that was verbal and was not included in his written order, they're still in compliance. So it sounds like it's in the weeds, but really it's what's at the heart of this argument here. And now Judge Boasberg wants more details on the timing, and this is what the Trump administration is pushing back on today, saying that he's beating a dead horse. We also had the opportunity, and so did Telemundo, to speak to 3 families who say that their loved ones who were deported to El Salvador are not criminals and that they are not part of Tren de Aragua. In fact, there was a family in Orlando that I'd like you to take a listen to.
An Orlando family saying immigration agents linked their brother to Tren de Aragua after noticing tattoos on his arms. They say the only crime he committed was having entered this country and turning himself into authorities upon his arrival was his only crime, because otherwise he has no criminal record.
Jose, we're also learning more about the criminality. Remember, Caroline Leavitt said from the White House podium on Monday that these were heinous monsters and that nobody, no judge, should be against deporting them to this high-security prison in El Salvador. But just last night in a filing, we saw an ICE agent, an acting field office director, say that many of these people don't have criminal records, those were his words, but just because they haven't committed a crime in the United States yet, that's only because they haven't been here long enough. And he says that they're still connected to the Tren de Aragua gang.
And Barrett, talk to us about this Alien, Enemies Act and the Tren de Aragua and what the White House said about it before the flights apparently went off.
Right. So this is an act that was passed back in 1798. It has not been used really outside of a wartime situation. It was used back in the War of 1812 as well as in both of the world wars. And essentially this law gives the president sweeping power to get rid of foreign nationals from our country.
Specific ones?
In 2 specific situations. One, if we're at war with another country, then the law says anyone that's from that country, you can get rid of them because we want to make sure that in a time of war, everyone who's here has the right allegiance to this country. It also says, not in a wartime, but if there was an invasion or an incursion and it was from a foreign government, that the president would have this sweeping authority to get rid of people who were not citizens. So there's real legal questions here about whether this has risen to any of those circumstances. Obviously, we're not at war. We're certainly not at war with Venezuela. President Trump has tried to cabin this into a situation saying that these migrants are invading our country. And so because it's an invasion, he has this power. This is sort of the ultimate legal question that this Judge Boasberg, is having to rule on. We're now sort of having 2 different legal paths here. One is this ultimate question of, does this law apply and does the president have this authority? And then the separate legal question, as we've been talking about, is, has the administration violated Judge Boasberg's court orders? And those are sort of on separate tracks here.
What do you make of Chief Justice Roberts' comments?
These were extraordinary.
Unusual?
Unusual. This is, Supreme Court justices don't like to make comments off of the bench. They don't like to be in the situation of having to speak outside of court this way, but really necessary. And what you have here is the Chief Justice saying, impeachment is not the remedy here. We have a process for when you disagree with the court's ruling. It's called the appellate process. That is the way that it's been done for 200 years now. And I think the reason that the Chief Justice felt the need to speak out is not because the Chief Justice actually thought that articles of impeachment against Judge Boasberg or any of these judges had a likelihood of success, right? You need 60-something votes from the Senate to actually proceed with, removing a judge from office, which is not going to happen politically. But he felt the need to say this, I imagine, because this is a real attack on sort of the integrity of our justice system, the impartiality of these judges, and potentially the safety of these judges. We don't want presidents out there stirring people up, saying these are radical liberal judges or they're so corrupt or unethical. Basically, the Chief Justice is saying, go through the courts. This is the proper process. Stop targeting judges.